Week 5 is officially here. The Louisville Cardinals are on the road down in Raleigh on Friday evening to take on the NC State Wolfpack. We'll talk about keys to victory, players to watch for, while also answering, will the Cardinals defeat the Wolfpack on Friday evening? With that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On the Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I know it's been a little bit of a hiatus. Like I told you all, I was out of town, but not much NC State prep, but got to have my guy Grant Mulligan, football analyst of the state of Louisville.com, on for his weekly appearance. Grant, what's up, man?
Glad to be back, brother. Glad to talk NC State. Glad to be 4-0, baby.
Right. Dude, I like that
4-0.
I like that shirt.
Thank you.
I like how it has like the subtle "the" on the, like, I guess that's the right side of the shirt.
It's the left side of the shirt.
Oh, well, it's the way that the cameras are mirroring. But regardless, here to talk about Louisville playing against NC State. A guest on the show is Grant's cat that just walked across the camera screen.
That is the first time she's ever done that in any of our podcast history. She has never done that before.
Louisville wins against NC State, she has to do it every week until the Cardinals lose. I think that is the new superstition. But nonetheless, preview episode for the game against NC State. As Grant mentioned, Louisville is 4-0. First time since 2016. They're trying to become 5-0 for the first time since 2013. And it's a very interesting game. I know that a lot of people have some differentiating thoughts. This is the first true road test for Louisville, not in an NFL stadium. So they will be on the road at NC State Friday evening. Grant, by all means, it seems like people are expecting Louisville to win this game. Let's talk about what the Cardinals need to do to be victorious in this contest. I know you have a defensive key to victory. I have an offensive. We'll start out on the offensive side of the ball, Grant. My opinion, it's protecting Jack Plummer. I think that, look, I don't care what you say about NC State, whether you think that they are just struggling to start the season or you just don't think they're good and they never will be. You're playing in a hostile environment that has been hostile for Louisville in years past since joining the league. It is a blackout game, so obviously the fan atmosphere is going to be jumping. You can't let NC State get momentum. Obviously, we talk about when Jack Plummer has a clean pocket, he does really well. And even when there's some pressure, he still is able to evade it here and there. But I feel like when pressure does come is when the hesitation and indecisiveness pops up on those reads as a passer. In my opinion, the best key to victory for Louisville's offense, you could say establishing the run. That's fine. I'm going to go with protecting the quarterback here.
I agree. I think that's a great point to make. And I think as this offensive line continues to play together, they've done an exceptional job both in run blocking and pass protection so far. Plummer's only been sacked 5 times. Which is under 2 sacks a game, which is, I mean, there's still some area for improvement there, but by any standard, I think that, to keep it to almost a sack a game or less is really impressive by the entire offensive line. They've really stepped up as a group. They were a group I had worried about coming in at the end of last season, coming into the season. You and I have talked at length about the talent that has been added to the room, about how hard the staff went at improving in the trenches offensively and defensively. But on the offensive line, we have several new starters in new places. So I think that they're going to have a great game, a great showing as they continue to play together. They continue to gel together. But you're absolutely right. If we can keep Jack Plummer upright, we can continue to see these efficient showings like he had last week. And of course, when the pass blocking is going well, hopefully that also lends to run blocking going well. But keeping Plummer upright is absolutely one of the best ways to get this offense humming.
I definitely agree there. You told me before the show that you had a defensive key to the game. Now, this is an NC State offense that has really just confused me because I thought they were going to be a lot better. They brought in an offensive coordinator that was very familiar with their incoming quarterback, Brennan Armstrong. He coached him at Virginia when he almost threw for 500 yards on Louisville, new coaching staff. But he was also there at Syracuse when Garrett Schrader and Sean Tucker shredded the Louisville defense in the opener in 2022. Their offensive coordinator has had success, but this season they've sort of struggled against lackluster competition. I know that they're 3-1, but they have yet to against a Power 5, you could say a Division I FBS team. They've yet to put up over 24 points. What is your key to the game defensively for the Cardinals in this?
I think it's a key to victory is something that I've wanted to see for the past few weeks, and it's looked like we've started to get better, but it's turning our pressures into sacks. The defensive line, specifically Ashton Gelati, has done an excellent job thus far in the season at generating pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Ashton Gelati, per PFF, was one of the top 4 or top 5 pressure generators in the entire country. I think he had a pass rush win rate of nearly 20%. And though last week he turned in 2 sacks, which is great. That's the kind of performance that we're expecting. Not only do we need him to capitalize on these opportunities, but we need the rest of the line to contribute as well. As we saw last year, whenever we had dominant defensive performances, it was because multiple players on the line were getting involved. Multiple guys were creating havoc. You couldn't just double one guy. You had to pay attention to multiple guys. It was really difficult to keep your quarterback upright. We've had a lot of success at getting pressure on Brennan Armstrong in the past whenever he was at Virginia. And I think that if our defensive line is able to capitalize on this opportunity, then that's going to be able to lead us to victory. If we're able to create negative plays, create havoc in the backfield, and get Brennan Armstrong sacked, then I think we're going to have a much easier path to victory.
You have to take into consideration the competition in play.
Right.
Louisville and NC State haven't played overall great teams outside of obviously the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, in which NC State has their lone loss on the year, but pretty identical in terms of quarterback pressures. They both, up to this point in the season, have not given up a ton of pressure on their quarterback. They have not given up a ton of sacks.
Both have 5 sacks. Both quarterbacks have been sacked 5 times so far.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at just over, 1.25 a game, which I think equates out to both being inside of the top 30 nationally. And I think that one thing Brennan Armstrong is going to look to do is look for those underneath routes within the Louisville defense to try to build that confidence up that he just really has not had really since 2021, because last year he struggled pretty mightily for a pretty bad offense. But I now want to transition to talking about the players to watch. Grant and I both have one player on each side of the football. We'll talk about who those players are here momentarily after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. There's so many applications that you can go with: spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. If you've been thinking about joining, now is the time. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Hey, Cardinal fans, once again, obviously the college football season is a little over 25% of the way complete, and Locked On is continuing to kick up coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, while also going in-depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts, covering their team every day. Find Locked On College Football Kickoff live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. But another thing you won't want to miss is this preview episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast, simply because my good friend is on once again, Grant Mulligan. Grant, key players of the game. I asked you to pick two, one on each side of the football. Let's start offense.
All right, on offense, one thing that I've loved to see, and it is 100% absolutely deserved, is the national attention that we're starting to get for Jamari Thrash. He's had a great start to his season. He's been a really great performer. He's got us out of a lot of spots. But because he's gotten into that national spotlight, teams are absolutely going to be paying attention to him and where he is on the field. So I'm going to say player to watch, Kevin Coleman Jr. Because as we start to see more defensive attention towards Jamari Thrash, deservedly so, I want to see what those opportunities look like for the other receivers on our roster, specifically when a guy like Kevin Coleman, he's yet to have a game in which he has had substantial volume, at least to what I would consider to be substantial volume. And I think he's shown flashes of a lot of talent with us so far. And I think he's just right there on the surface of a breakout game, of a serious performance. So I think as the NC State Wolfpack looks to slow down the clear monster that we have in Jamari Thrash, I would love to see a Kevin Coleman breakout game. I think he's going to have the opportunity to do so, and I look forward to seeing it.
He's due, man. He's really due to have a breakout game. The most receiving yards he's had in a game this season so far is 66. That came against Georgia Tech. He also had a touchdown in that. A player who was due up until last week is my player to watch offensively. I'm going with another receiver that is AHB. Amari Huggins-Bruce had a fantastic game last week. He had, I believe it was 3 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of those came on a 55-yard catch and run. But I think he brings another element to this offense. There are multiple receivers that can take the top off of the defense on this Louisville receiving core. I think we have talked about them already on this show. For me, it's Amari Huggins-Bruce. I feel like he sort of gets lost in discussion when you talk about this wide receiving core. And this is no disrespect to him. I think it's more so because of what Jamari Thrash is doing. You talk about, Plummer, Jordan, and Thrash being the 3 players that are focused on the most. You get a lot of attention to Kevin Coleman Jr., and I think that it's time that hopefully this is able to kickstart what is going to be a solid junior season for AHB. So 2 receivers that we've looked at as the players to watch for on offense. Let's transition over to the defensive side. If you select my player here, Grant, you're just going to host the show by your lonesome for the rest of the episode.
All right, let me see if I can't do that. Let me steal your spotlight. I am going to say Jermaine Lole because did I do it? Was I successful? Okay. As he continues to get healthier and as he continues to make a larger role for himself, I think that we're really poised at the time of the season in which he could start to take command in that defensive line room and really help slow down the rushing attack. Because that's what he was heralded as whenever he was brought in. He was a great run defender at Arizona State. We didn't get to see it his first season here. I hope that he's able to work into a more comfortable situation now that he's healthier. He drew the start. I think that it's about time for him to break out in a Louisville uniform. And I think against a mobile quarterback like Brennan Armstrong is, who's actually leading the team in rushing, having a guy who can clog those holes and make it more difficult for Brennan to escape. And also, as I'm looking for more guys on the defensive line to start generating more pressure, he's just a guy who the talent is all there. He's getting healthier. And I really just hope that he gets his opportunity to remind the nation why he was in draft conversations before he left Arizona State.
I like that analysis there because I think that we sort of overlook what Jermaine Lole can bring to this team. But I think that there is a situation or possibly a scenario to where you could argue that Louisville's defense would be at its best and that would feature Jermaine Lole in the equation for the Cardinals, playing a ton of snaps. So I definitely agree there, and I think that he's going to be a player to watch for. For me, it's Jalen Alderman. I'm going with Alderman here because I felt like he had the best performance of the season last week against. Sorry, I clicked on ESPN and video. Could you hear that?
I could not know.
Okay, so like a bunch of music started playing. I was like, oh no. I'm going with Alderman here. I think he had his best game of the season, obviously 4 games in, but he led the team with 8 tackles. He had a sack. He had a tackle for loss. And I think that is especially impressive considering that you're going up against Thomas Castellanos, who was extremely mobile. So to be able to contribute to that portion of the defense is key. For me, I feel like for a defense that is, yearning for defensive pressure in opposing backfields, I think that this is an opportunity to where I think Alderman can be used in a couple of different ways as an inside linebacker. I think that, we sort of underrate him as a pass rusher through the middle of the defense. But I do think that he's the player for me. And I've sort of rotated talking about linebackers because TJ Quinn was my player to watch last week when it came to keeping Thomas Castellanos, or containing him, I should say. So I'm going to go Alderman here. He's a guy that has played in the spotlight, and you're on the road. You've got some young players. You've got some new players that haven't played in this league, and I look for Alderman to bring some of that leadership Friday night.
Can I add one more player before we move on?
Okay.
I just thought about this in the wrinkle. I think Devin Neal has the opportunity to have a big game. I think we're playing against an aggressive quarterback who likes to take shots, and I think being on the back end, he's going to have an opportunity if he can. He's shown some really good performances so far in stepping in the role since we lost MJ Griffin for the season, and I think that this is an opportunity to maybe get a turnover for him, make some splash plays. I've been very happy on his performance so far, filling in that safety role, and I think he could have a big game this week.
I would definitely agree with that. I think that, honestly, you could go with Neal, you could go with Minkins, you could go with Cam Kelly, because I think all 3 are going to be tested. You know that Robert Anae is going to draw up some plays to try to get some separation in the back half of the secondary, because if this game gets into a shootout like it possibly can, NC State is going to have to find some offensive momentum. So we'll see how that goes. But the main question that has to be asked, if you're watching this show on YouTube, you can see it on the right at the bottom. Is Louisville going to beat NC State? Grant and I are both going to answer that here in just a second. Before we do that, I want to thank you all again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the show is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team, every day. Grant, 18 minutes have already flown by on this special weekly episode that you always appear in. Definitely appreciate you for coming on, especially on short notice with me being out of town. But I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm going to make you answer a question. Before we do that, Louisville, currently a 3.5-point favorite. I don't like this measurable at all, but I'm going to mention it because it's relevant. Louisville is, in terms of the ESPN analytics department on the matchup predictor, 68.7 or 67.8% projected to win on Friday evening. I don't feel good about this game. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, NC State sucks. Louisville's going to win by 26. If they do, I will happily be wrong. But I want to hear from you. Does Louisville win tomorrow night?
I believe we do, but I think it's going to cause a lot more stress than people think. And again, just like you, I would love to be wrong about this. But this is an easy game to fall asleep on. And it's a lot of the fans have gotten that way. And I don't want that to taint my perspective, because I don't want to think that the staff is sleeping on this game and looking ahead to Notre Dame, because that's what most of the fan talk has been about. So I don't want to put that on Brom and them, that's what they're doing, because
Right.
I would highly doubt that they're sleeping on this game. They know as much as anybody that the only week that matters is the current week that you're on. But it becomes very tempting when you have an opponent like Notre Dame immediately following. It becomes tempting to start peaking just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And NC State hasn't lived up to necessarily the expectation of how strong they would be going into the season. But I still think it's a difficult game. You're going in a blackout game. You're going into hostile territory. You've got guys who in the past are playmakers. Brennan Armstrong has put up big numbers back when he was with Virginia. Kevin Conception's actually a player I thought very highly of coming out of high school. He's their leading receiver now. So I do not want to fall asleep in this game. I think it's going to be tighter than people think. I think that once their offense hits on all cylinders, that they're going to be very tough to stop, very tough to slow down. I'm going to go with a score prediction. I'm going to say that Louisville wins by a touchdown. I'm going to say 35-28.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be a game all the way through. I don't think that we're going to get to the fourth and it's going to be a comfortable situation. I wouldn't be shocked at all for it to be a battle the entire time.
Yeah. I have had this game circled on the schedule all offseason as the game I'm like, this is the one that I am most low-key worried about because of some of the context. Do I think that NC State is good as Louisville? No. Do I think Louisville wins this game? I do. My score prediction is 31-28. I think that Louisville wins. I think they win. And at the end of the day, a win is a win is a win. On the road on Friday night, I take that 10 times out of 10. But don't take that as me sitting here disrespecting Louisville. I had somebody comment under the YouTube section that I have a loser mentality because of some of the credit I give for other teams. Now, granted, I didn't project to beat Boston College by 28 points, but it comes under this assumption that I give other teams too much credit, and I don't feel like I do that. I try to be realistic here. I will offer this as some parting thoughts. The potential for that offense is there. I know that their fans are almost pretty pessimistic about their team. But how many times on the other side of things have Louisville fans been pessimistic about their team and they end up winning the game and even potentially winning it handedly? I think that Brennan Armstrong showed in that Notre Dame game that if they were consistent, they could have hung with Notre Dame. Granted, you can play the hypothetical game all you want to. They still lost 45-24. But you are going to NC State on the road in a night game on a non-Saturday situation. That has been one of the places that I have worried about the most since Louisville's joined the ACC, because it seems like we always get them in a night game. We beat them in 2015 at like a noon kickoff with Lamar Jackson. We beat them in 2019, in which was one of the sloppiest Louisville games that I have ever seen. It was horrible. 2017, it was rough. Night game, it was rough. We lost, by the way. 2021, we had the lead going into the fourth quarter, and we got blown out. Also a night game. That stadium, when they're playing good, it gets behind their team. And that's what I worry about with it being the very first true road game in which there has been a competent level of opposing fans cheering. No disrespect to Georgia Tech or Indiana, but let's be serious here. First true road test. Probably the best competition we played so far, in my opinion. Does Louisville win? I think so. I do think so. Is it going to be a game where Louisville wins by 28? No. If it is, I'll admit that I'm wrong. I will gladly admit that I'm wrong, but Grant, that's a tough one. I'm trying to be realistic here. I
agree with you
that Louisville is good. I think this is – I don't think any Louisville team in the Satterfield era is as good as this one. I'll say that.
I agree with you completely. And I'm not one who's, I don't see you, and of course I'm biased because we're boys, but I don't see you in that light of just being a pessimistic. You are very realistic in your takes, and I'm very similar in that sense, is that I don't want to fall asleep on an opponent that very clearly has the talent to put it together. Like I said, whenever I discussed it, they have legitimate talent on the offensive side of the ball, and they also have some guys on defense as well.
Very good. I mean, not very good. The statistics, I don't think, tell the full tale. Teams start out slow sometimes. I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, but I forgot to mention that too, is look at last year's Louisville team. They started out slow and then boom, for some reason, a flip switched. Gosh, dude, can you tell that I've been in a work conference all week? But all it takes is one performance to get back on track. And it's way too early in the year to just totally write off NC State, in my opinion. Exactly. I could be wrong. They might not be good.
I agree. I don't think we've seen enough sample size to write off anybody, both in favor of Louisville or against NC State. I think this is going to be a battle. I hope it's a battle because those are always fun to watch. But I do believe that Louisville pulls it through at the end, and I think it's going to be closer than a lot of people realize.
I agree there. That is going to be all for this episode with Grant Mulligan, football analyst for the stateoflouisville.com. There will also be another preview episode, a crossover pod between myself and the hosts of Locked On Wolfpack. So be sure to stay tuned to listen to that to get an understanding of what Louisville's walking into on Friday evening. But that's going to wrap up this Thursday evening edition of the show. Go Cards. Have fun this weekend. We'll see you right back here, hopefully discussing a win after this.